All right. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good day. Thank you very much for joining us today for our cross-regional webinar on education policy challenges. My name is Bart Gabriel. I am the Regional Network Coordinator of NORRAG for the North America, Eurasia, and Pacific regions of NORRAG's network, and I'll be hosting today's event. Before we properly get started, I would like to draw your attention to the QR code that's currently up on the screen to join the network if you haven't done so already. The network is free to join for anyone from anywhere, so really no reason to sit this one out, so to speak. I'd also like to encourage you to share who you are and where you're from and what do you do through our chat. Maybe you'll already find some like-minded professionals amongst you in the audience today. So, to kick things off, I will take you through the program for today, which commences with some remarks from me to refresh or inform you about who NORRAG is, who we are, what we do. And then following these remarks, our first speaker today will be Burcu Meltem Arik, who is, among other occupations, the Observatory Coordinator at the Education Reform Initiative at Sabancı University. Her presentation today will concern policy challenges in the Turkish context, as well as recent developments and trends with regards to the effects of schooling across different parts of the education sector. Following that up, there will be a brief intermission where I will draw your attention to our social systems map, which is a sort of crucial part of digital infrastructure of our network that can sort of help you find the people that you're most interested in collaborating with. Then we will move on to our second presenter for today, Susan Opok, the Executive Director at the Forum for African Women Educators, who will speak about significant progress, trends, and challenges in gender-responsive education planning in East Africa, using Uganda as a case study for her presentation. And then our final speaker today is Israel Coelho, who is Program Assistant at the Latin American Campaign for the Right to Education, whose presentation will offer insight into regional policy challenges, particularly the relationship between digital rights and the right to education, the impact of technology, and the importance of alliance building to address the present moment. So all in all, you'll hear three different regional perspectives today, which will hopefully bring together in a joint discussion and during the Q&A. If any questions occur to you today, please drop them in the chat or in the Q&A window. That will follow the presentations. We've left some room towards the tail end, so hopefully we'll share a fruitful discussion. And closing that, we'll have reached the end of today's event, where we'll have some additional remarks to share. So now, to turn to NORRAG in brief, we are the Global Education Center of the Geneva Graduate Institute. We're a global network of more than 6,000 members from across more than 180 countries. We've been around since the 1970s as one of then multiple research review and advisory groups charged particularly with reviewing and sharing education research related to the Global South. Following several reorganizations and gradual shifts down south, we've located in Switzerland from Scandinavia and increasingly localized and decentralized our presence across the world. We've kept our focus on addressing questions of quality and equity in education and development. We've also emphasized amplifying underrepresented expertise in education, particularly in and from the Global South. Our network consists of people from across various sectors, from private to intergovernmental, and everything in between, which allows us to broker, co-produce, and disseminate knowledge through our network. The work we do should help our stakeholders know what robust evidence exists, amplify knowledge that is context relevant, access underrepresented knowledge, and then act to formulate priorities and solutions with all of that knowledge in mind. We do that across 4 themes, which are informed by 4 questions. How can data and evidence support the inclusion of marginalized groups in learning? How does equitable and quality education overlay and intersect with sustainable development goals? Do innovations and disruptions improve access, equity, and quality in education? And can private sector approaches in education uphold access, equity, and quality? All of these are underpinned by a transversal commitment to partnerships as a pathway towards institutional sustainability for NORRAG and our partners. So our network is important to us. You are important to us. Hopefully you probably are to each other as well. Our network is divided across the world and continues to grow. We're in touch with our members via our monthly newsletter, where we share updates, feature news from partners, and platform our members in the Map and Tell section of our newsletter. I don't do that alone, though. I am working together with our team, with Felia Costa, who is responsible for the Hispanophone countries in our network, and Ida Mosai, who will close out today's event, responsible for the Anglophone African countries. And we're always here to help you connect. Aside from our newsletter and the social systems map, we also offer opportunities to contribute to NORRAG special issues, which are released periodically on emerging themes in education, policy insights, which are shorter form and geared towards a practitioner audience, our briefs on innovative financing in education, our various ongoing blog series, which have a particular focus and which are always active in accepting submissions, as well as NORRAG series of edited volumes on international education and development. So please subscribe to get our calls for contributions. And then finally, our Knowledge Equity Initiative, The South Also Knows, provides some additional member spotlights and opportunities to showcase your work. So on the note of showcasing work, I would like to thank you once again for joining us, and I would like to hand over the floor to Burcu, who will be our first speaker today.
Thank you. Let me share my presentation and then I will introduce myself. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Great, super. So good afternoon. It's evening here in Istanbul. My name is Burcu. Thank you. Thank you to NORRAG for this invitation. I'm based in Istanbul. I coordinate the Education Observatory in Turkey at the Education Reform Initiative, Sabancı University. We are an independent think and do tank, that's what we call us, founded in 2003. We are based in Turkey, and our actually focus area is K-12, not the higher education, though I will have a remark on higher education. Our mission is to generate evidence-based, participatory, and rights-based insights to improve education policy in Turkiye now. We changed our name. We work across research, monitoring, convening, and public engagements, and we publish Turkey's annual education monitoring report, which has become a key reference for policymakers, civil society, and the public. Today, I will draw from a 2005 report, which we will launch this Wednesday. So you will hear the data and the results first before the Turkish audience, I would say. And I will try to outline current education challenges in Turkey and the priority policy areas that needs urgent attention. Let me begin by giving a brief overview of the scale of the education system in Turkey. We have a huge landscape, as you can see. Of course, it's comparable with Africa and South America. But it's critical for you to understand that we have quite a lot of number of schools, over 1 million teachers, and nearly 18 million students. This is a large and diverse system that we are talking, and it is unfortunately marked by regional inequalities, demographic pressures, and multiple overlapping crises, economic, ecological, social. And within this landscape, actually large landscape, one of the most pressing structural issues relates still to the access. So this is the numbers that you see. Despite important efforts since particularly 2000, access still remains a major challenge in Turkey, as shown, as you can see. There are more than 800,000 children are outside of formal education, and some of them are Turkish citizens, some of them are foreign national children. We have over 4 million Syrian refugees in Turkey. But this is not the case. We also encounter actually children who are enrolled in open education and vocational training centers. Although vocational training centers, for example, they're technically registered as formal education, but throughout the week, only one day they spend in the school, and they are actually lacking important infrastructures. So the number that rises to over, nearly 105 million children that are outside the school that we actually consider. This represents a persisting structural issue. And when we zoom in geographically, when we see how it is in different parts of Turkey, you can see from the map that the southeastern part is unfortunately disadvantaged, and it's the Kurdish region. So among students between 14 and 17 age, around 8% have been out of formal education for the last 2 years. This is a high number, I would say. And it's, as you can see, they are mostly clustered in the southeast part of Turkey. These inequalities actually mirror broader socioeconomic disparities. But alongside access gaps, early warning signals inside schools also help us to understand disengagement. So one of the key indicators that we look at is the absenteeism, actually. It's a warning signal for us, and it functions as an early indicator of this engagement. It's not only an academic issue, it signals material deprivation, weakened school belonging, and these patterns strongly intersect with broader issues of poverty, labor, and social exclusion, as you can see on my slide here. This graph shows that for 15 to 17 years old, labor force participant remains high, especially among boys. Child poverty and deprivation are striking, which I will share in a minute, the other slide. But this doesn't mean that girls, it's an issue for girls as well, because they do labor at home, and it's not counted. It's not, it's a gender issue, really. There is a comparative study across 31 European countries that shows Turkey is the least effective country in reducing child poverty through social transfers. We have been monitoring social transfers quite a while. The effectiveness of it, it really seriously raised questions about it. So inequality is also reinforced by, as you can see, by household level spending patterns, which I will share again in a minute. Am I quick or am I okay with my presentation?
You're a little bit quick and very okay.
Okay, great. So as you can see, the richest household spends 28 times more on education than the poorest households. And private education expenditures are extremely unequal. This is a huge problem in Turkey, as I know that NORRAG is working on innovative financing. So that's also, we are working on that as well. This is a structural inequality that shapes learning opportunities from early childhood onward. And these inequalities, unfortunately, continue into adulthood. So here is again another critical indicator for us, not in education nor in employment. The NEET data reflects persisting high rates for Turkey. And actually, you can see that the number is for women is far higher than the EU averages. And gender is a key determinant here. This indicates barriers in mobility, care responsibilities, employment opportunities, and social norms. Since 2018, actually, it's not allowed to use gender in the Ministry of National Education words or any kind of documents or any projects. So meanwhile, the pathways that are intended to support youth transitions, such as vocational education, but I shared earlier the problematic there as well, but this carry its own vulnerabilities, unfortunately. So what is the case with vocational education? It was once a kind of seen as an opportunity, but it became a kind of vulnerability area. The 40% wage gap between vocational high school graduates and higher education graduates pushes young people to pursue university exams, regardless of fit. More seriously, Turkey, unfortunately, ranked, let me see the number, Turkey ranked first in Europe in fatal workplace accidents in 2023 and 24, and at least Unfortunately, sadly, 72 child workers died in 2020 since January up until now. This reflects an urgent need for safe, regulated, and rights-based vocational pathways. Higher education, although it's not within our scope, but we actually look to the transition to higher education, so it suffers from its own set of systemic pressures, as you can see here. The real wages of university graduates have declined sharply over the past 20 years. Placement rates fell by 5.9 points in 2 years. And in 2025, 70% of the university quotas remained unfilled, and 82 of them in private foundation universities. This indicates, and we have university in every province in Turkey. To prove the access, actually, but it indicates a mismatch between higher education expansion and labor market realities. So let me turn to the early stage of education from here, where inequalities are first formed. So it is the early childhood education, preschool education. It remains non-compulsory in Turkey. You can see the numbers here. 4 years ago, actually, age 5, Turkey had a kind of a policy target to reach to 100% and to make it compulsory, but recently they decided not to, so it's still not compulsory. And it's the strongest tool for tackling inequality, yet it's not universally guaranteed. Actually, when you look to the financing to the budget of the Ministry of National Education, it's less for the early childhood education, but it's high for the higher education. And when you compare the outcomes, actually, you need to focus more on early childhood education. That's what actually our stand in Turkey as policy organization. This is a structural challenge we have been struggling for many years. Here we see the percentages of students in double shift schooling, a long-standing challenge in Turkey. It's not only a capacity issue, it disrupts children's daily routines, weakens relational and emotional well-being, and limits learning time. Despite these challenges, I'm coming to the end of my presentation. And there are many more. I just actually wanted to kind of highlight some areas only. Despite these challenges, the system also shows encouraging signs for forward movement in Turkey. I would like to mention those as well. Like, greening education became a more active topic with greater attention to climate literacy, climate justice, up to a point, and sustainability. And there are significant advances being made in AI and educational technologies. Transition to open education have been tightened, which is critical. It helped reduce early disengagement from formal schooling, but there are still issues there. But to conclude, I would like to highlight key policy directions that could guide for you to understand the Turkish arena, I would say. So we are actually promoting for every child should have access to universal daily school meal, at least once a day. Age 5 should be included within compulsory early education, and this will reduce early inequalities and improve school readiness. Teachers should receive strengthened and consistent support. I didn't mention much about teachers. We have a huge young teacher network, but there are many issues there as well. Pluralism and inclusivity, it's becoming much more conservative in Turkey. Maybe you follow the politics. It's an issue, so should be foundational principle in education policy. So we are pushing forward for a rights-based system that must protect diversity and ensure that all children feel safe, valued, and represented. And also, as elsewhere in the world, the bullying is a huge issue, not only between peers, but between different participants, like teacher to teacher, parent, children. So school climate should be strengthened to prevent bullying and promote belonging and relational well-being. In closing, I would like to mention that it is shaped, our education landscape is shaped by both persistent structural inequalities and emerging opportunities. Thank you very much. I look forward for your contribution and questions. I hope that I did a good job in explaining how this education system looks like in Turkey.
Fantastic. Thank you so very much. I'm sure that we all learned a lot from that, and there are quite a couple of points where you mentioned like there's much more to expand on, so hopefully we'll get around to that. I would like to briefly interrupt the schedule of presentations for a brief explainer on our social systems map, which is a way that we're hoping to improve access for everyone to our network. Now, long ago, we had a list-based system where you got emails every now and again about all the people in the network and no one knew who anyone was, and that was bad because that's not very interactive. The real benefit of a network is in everyone seeing everyone and having access to the information that matters to them. So we came up with something different. The QR code that we started with just now, that would lead you to this webpage. So perhaps some of you might be here. Otherwise, have a look at my screen where it is also visible. Here we can find the registration page for our social systems map. This thing is free. It is a fairly low barrier to entry, just your name and your email, and you'll get a link. We don't work with an account, we work and a password, we work with a customized personal link. So the pro tip of the day is save this thing and bookmark it. That's really very important. I always lose mine, and that's a headache. Once you sign up, you'll be taken to this bio page. This is the landing page for everyone that makes an account. At this landing page, you can put in a photo of yourself. Mine's a little bit old, and a bio, and our terms and conditions, which I will assure you are nothing too very special. After that, you'll be moving towards your profile section, which is where you fill out all the fields of information that help make our network an interesting place to look at for everyone that's on it. So that will be your institution, the type of institution, the title, where you are from, what sort of identity markers might apply to you, your particular expertise, and very important, you can opt into the South Also Knows database here. So if you are from or in the Global South and you'd like an additional spot to showcase your work, there is a separate network object on our website that is available to everyone, also people that don't have an account with us, which we can sort of use as a stick in the mud when people say, oh, I would love to do some work on something in Ghana, but I don't know anyone there. You can hold up this network object and you can say, there's people there. You just have to look. We promise they're out there. Once you do this, you can progress towards the map. And the map view, that is our meat and potatoes. This is where the majority of the information is stored. It is a safe environment in the sense that you can muddle around with all of the settings, all of the search functions. There's nothing you can delete. There's no information you can permanently change for anyone else. It's safe. Please click on things and enjoy yourself. The splash page that you will land on looks like a bit of spaghetti sauce, tomato sauce particularly. This is our network. Every red dot here is a person with a career, a backstory, things they're interested in, and they might just be looking for you to send them an email. But that's a lot of people. So we've broken up our network into slices that you can organize for yourself. The first of these are the filter buttons. They're on the top left corner of your screen, and they can just allow you to cut out everything that is noise to the signal that you're interested in identifying. So say you're interested in people that live in Armenia that do this work. That's a lot of people gone. If you're looking for specific regional connections, this is a very easy way to narrow down the scope of your inquiry. If you are interested in particular fields of expertise, you can also have a look at those. They work similarly. If you click multiple filters on top of one another, they work as AND statements. So it will filter out everybody that works in adult education in Armenia. That particular string might return 0 results, but in many cases with a slightly larger population, it's a very helpful set of tools. If you get stuck or end up somewhere that's unfamiliar, you can always press the Z key or hit F5. That will reset everything and you're back to where you started. So that's the filters. There's also these different views. We have the directory view. This is where everyone lands. This is what we're talking about. Then there's the South also knows view, which is a tad smaller, but it is also more interconnected. And it can help you narrow down not only people, but also perhaps people that know one another, that can put you in touch with a network. Or if you're looking to contribute to a more formalized network, there is our related networks view, where you can see everyone in our network that has worked together with ESSA, for example, or with the interagency network for education and emergencies, or the KICS program, of which we host one of the hubs, the EMAP hub. And that too can sort of point you in the right direction. The involvement screen is something that you might be most familiar with if you're working with social network analysis in any serious capacity, because that will just sort of tell you who all has declared to know one another. This is something that I'll come back to in just a second. And then there's our geographical map, which does all of the breaking down into regions that you can also do via the directory map. The most advanced feature that we have, and perhaps complementary to all the filters that we use, is the selector function. So I just clicked the search button in the top right. You have to give the project a moment to compile itself, become searchable. Then there's a rocket ship, and we love clicking on rocket ships. And that allows you to build a selector. And instead of being limited to the few fields of information that we've put in our filters, you can look at everything here, which allows you to create a very specific search query for a very specific kind of person. This takes a while, so at the interest of time, I won't demonstrate this, but you could find someone working in a particular province in Malaysia, working on adult education, who identifies as a woman. That all is possible. It's really very granular, and it's all open and transparent to everyone, for everyone. That is really the value and the utility of this social systems map. I highly encourage you to check it out. Now, the connections that we saw just now, they are declared by our individual members. So from time to time, to come back on your account, go to the Connections tab, and find the people that you know and have worked with in the past. I have done so 33 times, and I hope that after today's event, there will be more of you whose name I can type in and who I can share my connections with. So, for example, Burcu, our first speaker of today, she is on the network. I found her. I actually reached out to her in part because of how I found her on this social systems map. And I've declared that I am now familiar because we've shared this event and we've exchanged a couple of emails. I have some sense, I have a big scoop about all of the work that she's been up to in the last year. And hopefully that all will become a linkage for generative interactions in the future. So make an account, have a look, and then every now and again, check, oh, I've been working with so-and-so. Maybe they're on there. And if they are, well, that's great. Tell them you're connected. And if they're not, send them an email or send them an email with me and CC, and I'll pester them. So very briefly, that is the social systems map for projects and research agendas that benefit from national or international collaboration. Hopefully this is a tool in your toolkit that can help you find people that would love to work with you. So with that brief interruption at an end, I would love to give the floor to our second speaker today, Susan Opok. Floor is yours. Maybe there's some sort of connection issue. Israel, would you be able to give your presentation?
Yes, sure. Also, I noticed that Susan now started to share her screen. Maybe she wants to jump in.
Yeah. Oh, actually, yes. I now see that as well.
Yes. This is the wrong presentation. Sorry.
No problem at all.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Good evening, good morning. Thank you for the invite to make a presentation this evening from Uganda. It's evening. So I'm Susan Ukok Tumusime, and Executive Director of FAWE Uganda, an organization that is a Pan-African organization, which was started in 1992 by 5 African women ministers of education during the Education for All meeting. And the aim at the time was to see how to ensure that girls participated in school. In the 90s, girls in Africa especially were not so much in school. The focus was on boys majorly. So these ministers came together and said we needed to start an institution that would support and enhance girls' education. So today we stand at 34 chapters across Africa with the regional secretariat in Nairobi. FAWE Uganda, where I lead, was started in 1997. So we are just about 30 years old. So looking at the situation of education in Uganda, 48% of girls and just over 50% of boys are enrolled in secondary education. And that tells us that there are so many young people that are still out of education. And this was this is information highlighted by the Uganda Bureau of Statistics in 2020. So what interventions do we have related to gender responsive education in Uganda? The government of Uganda has been quite, at the forefront of support to gender responsive education, giving a right to education as a human right, but also with the Ministry of Education and Sports in Uganda, initiating and developing various policies that could support girls' education, especially, not leaving the boys behind, of course. We have the gender in education policy, education in emergencies policies, the school re-entry guidelines. We have roles and responsibilities of senior women, senior male teachers, life skills toolkit. We have affirmative action in higher education, issues to do with reporting, tracking, referral guidelines. We have a national strategy for girls' education. So all these policies have been initiated or started because of the need to support and enhance gender responsiveness, but also ensure that we have a conducive environment and support systems within the school system. So government has done this, but we also have different institutions, especially civil society organizations. We have agencies, CBOs, community organizations that have also come in to support gender responsive education. And this has been majorly through provision of scholarships or bursaries at various levels, especially for girls' education. We have had advocacy on issues that relate to girls, challenges and effects or, on education, for instance, sexual reproductive health, wash issues, menstrual hygiene, menstrual health and hygiene, mental health issues, safeguarding corporal punishment. And while the government does a bit of this in terms of instituting policies, the civil society and other agencies come in to support and to advocate for these aspects. We've had campaigns on Go Back to School. We've had the First Lady, who is the Minister of Education, also initiate a campaign on prevention of defilement, child marriage, teenage pregnancy, and promotion of positive parenting in order to support gender responsive education, as well as livelihood support that has come through various agencies, government initiatives and so on. So coming back to what we, especially as FAWE, do, we are part of the system that has come to ensure that we support gender responsive education. And this is majorly because our mandate is to enhance girls' education, girls and women's education. So we have come in to strengthen systems and change, and also create changes in terms of systems, in terms of practice, in terms of mindset, in order to, as part of the processes to enhance gender equity and equality. But also we have recognized that in whatever we do, we need to institutionalize the efforts for impact. Rather than just doing what we do for the sake of it, the issue is how can we ensure that what we do actually creates impact? And the key aspect or the key driver is by institutionalizing. So we have various approaches. The gender responsive pedagogy, which is a FAWE model that was started in 2005, that has been taken on by various organizations today, some actually claiming that it is theirs, but definitely it was started by FAWE. We have the Higher Education Access Certificate, also an innovation that we recently started in about 2017-18 to try and support the marginalized young people access and complete higher education, especially those from very disadvantaged areas. We have TUSEME, where we have, advocating for girls' voices in, using clubs to make sure that the voices of girls are not left behind, and that can enhance the education and stay in school. So we virtually use an inclusive approach that does not leave anyone behind. Everyone needs to be in school, girl, boy, advantaged, disadvantaged, persons with disability, those that are from conflict areas, etc. So we try to advocate for that. And in what we do, we work with partners at all levels. We work with communities, we work with governments, we work with civil society, we work with parents, and so on. So it's a very concentrated, multifaceted approach that we utilize to ensure that we support gender responsive education. So these are some of the models that we have used and continue to use. I have spoken about gender responsive pedagogy that tries to build a capacity for school teachers to create safe school environments that encourage enrollment, but also completion of school by both boys and girls, looking at the language used in the classroom, materials that are utilized, teaching methods, the seating arrangement, etc. And then TUSEME, which is a Swahili word, which says, let's speak out, which is to bring out the voices of the young people, but also to hold duty bearers accountable. The TUSEME utilizes clubs where students are able to use theater to indicate what is either working well or not working well within the school system. Like I said, the Higher Education Access Certificate is one of the key innovations in higher education today, where young people that have not got the grades, the conventional grades for higher education, are bridged for 1 year, 34 weeks, do an exam, and then are supported to join higher levels of education. We have the Center of Excellence, where we have, we kind of show what it means to have a school that actually can provide adequate support and adequate learning for the young people. We also have included skillful parenting, because parenting is one of the issues that creates challenges for young people due to violence. Recently, we actually took on about 700 students to school. And we found that because during the home visit, we found that there's a lot of dysfunctional families. So when families are not functional, where there's separation, there's violence, it says children do not thrive. And we also have a mentoring program, Real Fathers, that is also supporting young fathers to become responsible, engaged, and loving within their families. So what are the challenges? And broadly, when I talk about this, the experience of FAWE comes across as experiences of other organizations, but broadly experiences that are in the environment that we work in. Broadly, there's limited resources and funding to support a lot of the things that would enhance gender responsive education support. Inadequate infrastructure also is a problem at various levels for the disadvantaged, for the persons with disability, but also our school systems. Generally, you find in the rural areas, dilapidated infrastructure. Sometimes infrastructure is lacking. We have in Uganda, we have great policies and many policies, but we have weak execution and implementations. We have, gaps in implementation of policies. The social cultural norms still seem to be quite heavy in terms of support to gender responsive education. Issues to do with mindset. People are so ingrained within their cultural and sometimes framed mindsets, which they, relate to either religion or, culture, and then, inhibit the, gender responsive education. Persistent violence. Violence continues against children. Currently, we are at 24%, but also, teenage pregnancy, for example, in the last, maybe 10 decades, we are still at 24. And so much effort has been put into this, so much funding has been put into this. So we are asking, what is the problem? We were at 25, we are now at 24 post-COVID, but, this is still very high. And we're also talking about high levels of poverty. So in my conclusion, in terms of what we think challenges us, is the policy frameworks and commitments to gender responsive quality education, issues to do with sustained funding and resources, to support gender responsive education for girls and boys. The roles of partnership is great and very necessary. I think we are on our way to reaching where we should be. However, of course, we still have various challenges here and there. So there's still some work to do. There's need to continuously engage, but also address the cultural and social, barriers to the education of girls. But also we need capacity building of institutions and strengthening to support gender responsive education and planning. So broadly, that is what I can or could present. I try to be very broad, but also to keep with the time. So thank you for the opportunity. I'm available to ask, to respond to questions if there is any. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. That was brilliant. So much ground to cover and so much information shared. Please, if you have questions about the two presenters that we've seen so far, drop them in the chat. Additionally, if you have had any issues making your network account, or if you have questions about what we can do, please also put it in either in the chat or in the Q&A, and we'll be happy to take that with during the plenary Q&A after the third speaker, which we will now turn to. You have the floor. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Let me just share my screen here. While I present myself, I was told I could present in Portuguese, but I noticed that the translation from English to Portuguese was not working so well. That happens with automated translators. It is fine, so I will do my best to speak in English, so maybe you can understand me better. So my name is Rafael Coelho. I'm from Brazil. I'm here representing CLAVE, the Latin American Campaign for the Right to Education. And what I will present here is our perspective on the transformative use of digital technologies in education, presenting a Latin American and Caribbean context, and also bringing what we did and what we do on this issue. So the Latin American Campaign for the Right to Education is a regional network present in 18 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean. We have 35 members from national education coalitions to regional networks and also international NGOs. And we've been working on the defense of the right to education for over 20 years. I think right now we are at 22 or 23 years old. So this presentation starts with a general overview of the Latin American and Caribbean context. So this we try to deepen in this reflection in this regional report that you see here on the right side. The right to education in Latin America and the Caribbean, the present is the past of the future, which is an overview of the early 2020s in our region. So to gather some results of this research, we noticed that the far-right policies targeting the meaning of and content of the human right to education really skyrocketed in the early 2020s. We saw that in Brazil, we are seeing that in Argentina, and we might see that also in Chile for next year, given the results of the election. And we are also seeing that in El Salvador. So this is a context that is all through the region and really targeting the meaning and content of the human right to education. This perspective from the far right also bets on the privatization and lack of public investment in public education, which targets the conditions for the realization of the human right to education. So we saw drops in public investment and a rise in privatization, especially during the pandemic years around 2020 to the end of 2021. And also, we saw some emerging issues such as climate change and digital technologies, which did not emerge in 2020, but became more severe. So in 2023, I think UNICEF launched this report that mentioned that 90% of children and adolescents in Latin America and the Caribbean live in areas targeted by 2 or more climate or environmental risks. So this is over 100 million children living in areas like this. And regarding digital technologies, we saw that only 16% of countries guarantee privacy over educational data. This was especially critical during the pandemic, since we saw everyone relying on digital technologies to continue their education without any guarantee over the privacy, either from teachers, from school staff, or from students. So seeing this issue of the use of digital technologies in education, we saw the need inside CLADE to start to investigate it, to start to advocate for the transformative use of digital technologies, and to link this agenda with our agenda of defense of human rights to education. So we did that by connecting CLADE with both academia and CSO networks. So with academia, we partnered with some researchers and some associations to develop reports, and with CSO networks, especially networks linked with digital rights and digitalization in general, digital technologies in general, to also learn more from them and share our perspective with them. Fortunately, both words really connect, and we know that some CSO networks are formed by academia members, and some members of the academia are also part of CSO networks. So we got a really interesting flow in this perspective. So the results of this alliance building strategy are in a few reports that we published in the last 2 or 3 years. So one of them on the governance of digitalization of education, another of them on digital rights. So first, we saw the need to connect the dots between old problems and new ones. So the use of digital technologies in education pose new challenges for Latin America and the Caribbean, but these new challenges, they are linked with old problems that we already have, such as gender if I can give one example, such as gender-based violence, we see gender-based violence face-to-face. And then during the pandemic, we saw the emerge of cyberbullying. Now with generative AI, we see the generation of deep fakes that target girls in education. So we saw a new cover, a new how these problems developed to the digital world. The same with privatization. We were familiar with the privatization in the old scheme, and then right now we see the platformization of education, how Google, Microsoft, Zoom, and other big techs target education, public education, trying to exploit public education to implement their platforms and to privatize public education. And also issues such as teaching freedom and the teaching profession in general, which are also targeted by digital technologies and this platform economy that we now all live. We also saw the emerge of big techs in education as decision makers. They are not only trying to connect the schools or trying to connect with public policies, they're also engaging as decision makers in national and international levels. So we are all familiar with the concept of multi-stakeholderism, which we got familiar during this period that we saw how this multi-stakeholder narrative was being used by big techs to also be part of decision making in education. We also noticed the necessity to adopt a broader conception of the effects of digital technologies in education, to not consider just what takes place inside the classroom in the use of digital technologies inside the classroom, but the whole environment of digital technologies in education, how digital technologies are used in surveillance, how they're used in the school management, how they're used in the whole perspective, and also the impact that this has in the environment, how the batteries used for policies such as one laptop per child are used using the same materials that are exploited in our region. So, for example, if we take, for example, Brazil or Bolivia, where we extract iron, where we extract lithium, the same extractivism is the base for the digitalization of education. So we have to consider the environment as well and the concept of digital colonialism, how our region and the whole global south is being has their data exploited to generate profit for big techs. So we have to consider also the digital colonialism and the necessity to develop our own narrative. Given this perspective, what we believe in, and then we develop our perspective based on this concept of digital rights that we learned from an organization here in Latin America that is called Derechos Digitales, which translates from Spanish to digital rights. That the concept is very simple. The human rights that are applied offline also apply online. This is very simple, but we constantly forget about it. So by starting from this concept, we develop our perspective on the transformative use of digital technologies in education, which is based in human rights, based in the open source technologies for the common good, because we believe that the private technologies do not bet in the common good, and we saw this necessity to exploit, to develop our conception based on open source technologies, and also the concept of digital sovereignty and a commitment with critical digital literacy. Our commitment that students must not just be consumers of technology, but also critical citizens regarding the digital world, and also producers of technologies. And then by investigating and by sharing our perspective, we saw some possibilities from the local level, some possibilities emerging from grassroots, some possibilities emerging from universities here in Latin America and civil society as well. So, for example, we saw a local data center in an indigenous community in Mexico that was built to store community knowledge. We also saw here in Brazil a university extension program from a public university in the state of Bahia in Brazil to develop a hacker mindset within high school students. This hacker mindset is not a mindset to commit digital crimes, but a mindset to develop their own technologies, a mindset to use the technologies to expand their rights and not to limit their perspectives, not to limit their education. And also we saw and we did this together with a network called Internet Ciudadana, which translates to citizenship internet here in Latin America. We developed a project on the experimentation with open source technologies as an introduction to critical digital literacy. So this is a report that we published in the last few weeks. This is a roadmap to use open source digital technologies with teachers and students that we did in a public school in Argentina, and we're now gathering the results. So looking ahead, what we believe and what we see for the coming years, first, the constant development of digital technologies and the transformation of its narrative. Now we see artificial intelligence, for instance, and how the narrative constantly changes and how the narrative constantly is developing to become more interesting for decision makers, interesting for teachers, and for students as well, but do not consider them as people that hold rights. They're just considered as consumers of digital technologies. So we see that with AI as well, and we need to constantly adapt and constantly refine our narrative to tackle this colonial perspective that the big techs gather. Also, we have to integrate the education agenda in the digital agenda and also integrate the digital agenda in the education agenda. What I mean by saying this is the need for us as civil society that works on education to participate in debates around digitalization in general, to mention education as well, to mention education as part of the whole narrative of the digital economy and how education can also play a role for a safer and based on human rights digital universe in the future. And do the same with ourselves, with our members, within our networks, to also discuss digitalization, because usually digitalization is mentioned just to mention the technologies that are integrated inside the classrooms and do not consider the whole perspective and the whole environment. So we have to discuss this as well with teachers, with civil society with national education coalitions, and within the global education campaign as well. So we are doing that together with Internet Ciudadana, which we as CLARI are part of, and also we are part of the Global Digital Justice Forum as well, where we discuss many issues, including education. By doing that, we need to keep advocating in alliance with different movements and also sharing and systematizing transformative practices. So it's really interesting when you have the opportunity to share this perspective in broader events such as this one, because first we can share our reports, we can share our perspective, but usually we also learn a lot from different partners, different audience members who share also their perspective, and we get to know people all around the world. They're trying to build the same they're trying to build on the same bricks as we are building this the future that we believe in. So that's what I plan to share with you today. I thank you, NORRAG, for the invitation. Here is our website where you can find the reports, and my email as well, where I can send you the reports if you need them. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank all three of you for your wonderful presentations today. We will now be moving into the plenary Q&A session. There are a couple of questions that are out there already. I do want to make use of my position as moderator to throw in one question ahead of time to sort of kickstart the discussion in the spirit of cross-contextual learning. So a question to all three of you. You're from contexts where material and social and environmental factors are quite diverse. Are there particular aspects from one another's presentations that you recognize in your own context? And what are ways that you've seen or noticed or absence of solutions that you've maybe identified to counteract or address that challenge, either you or colleagues in the sector? Burcu, would you like to go first?
Yeah, thank you for Susan and Israel. That were really inspiring and informational speeches. With Susan's particularly, I find quite similarity in early marriages, early forced marriages for young girls. And I would like to understand more about how they work with young fathers, because it's a critical aspect and it's highly important to engage fathers. And we have been actually lacking that. There are many efforts and very important efforts, but I would like to highlight the importance of that. And if she can elaborate a bit more on the work that they do with fathers, I would be grateful. And for Israel, I would like to ask this question. And, it's the digital transformation is quite important everywhere. And how they deal with ethics, I would like to understand more, because it's now becoming a more critical issue in Turkey as well. And the ethics part not been discussed as it should be. I thank them both to highlighting these critical issues. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. Would either of you like to jump in?
Yes, thank you. I'll jump in. Thank you to the presenters and the facilitator as well. Issues to do with digitalization in education is one of the huge challenges that our country seems to be dealing with. It could be other countries as well. So the question is whether to stop using, say, mobile phones or, tablets for young people in school or not. I mean, it's a discussion that's ongoing. Of course, mobile phones are not accepted in schools, and yet sometimes they may be useful. And the aspect of AI is coming in quite strongly in terms of how should the education system deal with AI to ensure learning, but at the same time to prevent the negative perspectives. There is a lot of online abuse today. Girls are being abused quite a lot. We did a study during the COVID time to see the impact of COVID on school-going girls, and we found that a lot of girls, many girls, I don't remember offhand the percentage, but girls were being abused, asked to share their bodies, etc. And it's also been said that today there is a lot of suicidal attempts, but also suicide by young people because of AI and other such facets. So going to the aspect of how we work with men, we have a program that is called Real Fathers, Responsible, Engaging and Loving Fathers. It's an ECD program where we look for young men up to age 25, 18 to 25, who are first-time fathers because of the perception that the young fathers, the first-time fathers would be easy to take on new ideas and mindsets, perceptions to support the development of or functioning of their families, support to their spouses as well as to their children. So this process is promoting play, attachment, communication within the families, but within that we have mentors mentors for the young fathers, but also group meetings where, weekly or, maybe every 2 weeks, the fathers from a certain vicinity come together and have a discussion. So it is an interesting process, although one of the critical challenges is that the mentorship is free of charge. And so because of the distances, our rural areas are not like the townships where it's easy to find a young father to mentor. So the mentors are finding challenges in terms of going to search for the young fathers, but also because the young fathers are looking for survival. Many times the mentors go and cannot find them at agreed or appointed times. So it's a push and pull, but nonetheless, it's something that we are working on and trying to see its effectiveness in various parts of the country. Thank you.
Thank you both for the presentation. As similarities, I think it's really interesting, and I think it also shows our commitment that we all mentioned the aspect of gender. I think what Virtue mentioned around the role that girls have in while working with care inside their houses, and how this is not counted as work as well. This is something that we are pushing here in Latin America and the Caribbean also. And what Susan mentioned about engaging fathers, we are also developing. We're at the last stage of a KICS project, which also target early childhood and care, and how masculinities are important to consider in this process. How fatherhood is built, when what basis, what roles plays the father, and the relevance to engage these different community members in the education process in communities. Regarding technologies, on how we deal with ethics from our perspective, and what we have been learning from the digital rights activists, is a concept that they call ethics by design. So this is a very interesting concept that we adopted, and it mentions not only the ethics while using it, so the ethics that the teacher will apply, the student will apply, the principals, the education decision makers will apply um, on this process, but also in the production side. And regarding the production side, it's not just the biases on AI models that we all know and we are aware of, but also the environmental impact of these technologies, how they are produced, and the environmental impact that they have when they are produced. So by considering it all, it is important for us to reflect on what will we use in education and how will we use in education. So, and I mentioned that because Susan posed this question: do we stop everything? Do we hold the horses on education and technologies, and we go back to pen and paper? And this is also a discussion that we have in the movement. Some believe that education should be AI free zone, like we stop AI in education at all. Others tend to believe that there are ethical ways of using AI in education. There are ethical ways of using digital technologies in education. I would say that it's not to stop everything, but consider that digital technologies might not be the solution for everything, because how they sell it for us is that we would be revolutionary for education, that we will save everything. There is a book called "To Save Everything, Click Here," and the metaphor applies to education as well. They mention it how it could be all our problems could be solved by clicking some buttons, and it's not like that. And many technologies, including artificial intelligence, do not have strong evidences of its benefits in education. So we should also be aware of that as well, because and also many articles and many researches that are developed on the benefits of education in technologies are developed by big techs or by researchers funded by big techs. So we have to ask ourselves where this evidence is coming from, and if the evidence is strong enough, and what we want to achieve in education. This is the question for me, the most important question regarding the use of digital technologies in education, because what they say is that digital technologies in education enhance productivity, but we are not looking just for productive people in education. We're not looking at the most effective robots by the end of education. We're looking forward to critical citizens, to form critical citizenship. And if this applies to the way we teach history, if this applies to the way we teach sociology, the way we teach everything in education, this must also apply to the use of digital technologies. So if the technology is contributing to this critical citizenship, I think then it is safe to use. If its only objective is to enhance productivity, to make students produce more and teachers produce more, I think this goes on another way, in another direction that is not so interesting for us.
Thank you, all three, for very insightful comments here and for very generative responses to each other's points. Great. I would like to draw some attention to a couple of questions that sort of fall along the line of curriculum development across the different contexts that you're in. So there's one question about that is directed towards Susan Opok with regards to enrollment of girls after delivery of a child in the school system, and the question of curriculum development and enrollment. Sorry, and with regards to Burcu's presentation, the evolution of TVET curriculum in Turkey with regards to the changing needs of the labor market, as well as what the practical implications for curriculum design are when with regards to greening education at the primary school level. So I'd love to hear your thoughts, comments.
Susan first, I guess. Your first question was to Susan.
Mm-hmm.
The first question is on girls, pregnant girls returning to school. Yes, so in Uganda, the Ministry of Education approved a guideline on school re-entry, management of teenage pregnancy, and enrollment into school following pregnancy. And during COVID, this was when the approval actually came about. Although during the post, because we've had some conflicts, internal conflicts, and there was realization that there is need, because many girls went into captivity, many girls became child, soldiers. So as far away, we did a project where we supported girls in northern Uganda to be in school, return to school, and also have their children looked after by nannies within school, so that during the school time, the children were looked after, and they had also play material. So since then, we began to negotiate and advocate for a policy. And it wasn't agreed until during the COVID time, where we had so many numerous girls, coming pregnant, and the question was, what next? So the ministry approved a policy or a guideline. Fortunately, that was a good first step. Nonetheless, the contents of the policy or the guideline were quite interesting, because it, for example, allowed these young people to be in school for 3 months and then get out of the school system and return after, 6 months after delivery. However, the members of parliament refuted, the guideline and said, no, the girls can't come back 6 months after delivery, but we should come back 1 year after delivery. So there has been contestation, there has been argument about whether it should actually apply in the regular system, especially now. Some schools have said it was a policy for the COVID time. Although in the rural areas, it kind of seems to work. In the townships, it is a bit difficult. We have schools that are majorly initiated by the religious, facets, the Christians, the Muslims, that do not allow pregnant girls in schools. In the rural areas, I think because of the situation, circumstances, sometimes children are allowed to come in and sit their exams. Some are sent away, others. So it's something that is still in the forming. Broadly, there is a policy. However, the implementation of the policy is not regular, consistent, and there is no funding to support. So it's only civil society organizations like us. We actually built a childcare center in one of the refugee schools recently because I'm an Echidna scholar. So one of my impact projects was to build and see if it could work, and actually it's working very well. Yeah, so it's something that we continue to work on. Thank you. I think the TVET one is for Buchu.
Yes, well, there are still gaps in TVET, unfortunately, and the kids who graduate from TVET schools, they don't work in their own field. They prefer service sector for many reasons, and this is an issue actually. But the government and the ministry still continues to promote TVET schools without changing accordingly. And one critical thing is that the need for change is also in the sector itself, because the conditions, when they were working, when they're in school and they are doing the stage, for example, or after school, when they start working, the conditions are not so good. So the business sector also should turn to itself and to change the conditions that they give to their workers. Actually, this is critical. But in terms of regulations, there have been introduced to categorize vocational and technical Anatolian high school systems and vocational training centers as regional schools, specialized schools, in-sector schools, sector-integrated schools. So there are many tens of different items. This also confuses, and this also actually doesn't help to focus and to generate deeper knowledge, unfortunately. In sector and sector integrated schools will use according to the regulation, they should use the infrastructure of the enterprises that they partner with for educational facilities that these schools do not have, such as laboratories and libraries, so that they could be a kind of mentor institution. But in reality, there are few facilities that could work on this actually. The specialized schools in the TVET sector, they are good, really good. And they are expected to focus on specific fields, which there is one for artificial intelligence, there is one for green energy. There are many other specialized schools, which is aeronautical, civil defense also, in which vocational and technical Anatolian high schools offer education, maritime, agriculture, commerce, tourism, etc. And these schools also intended to have workshop and laboratory infrastructure, collaborate with universities, and some of them are really good. But there are still really gaps, and the curriculum, although they have a recent new curriculum in Turkey, there should be something else that should be going on. Unfortunately, the physical capacity, workshop space, anything. And with greening education, unfortunately, it is mostly curriculum based in Turkey. I think that it's the same for many countries as well. But Ministry of National Education also has a kind of strategy for combating climate change. And they are now renewing the strategy, which will impact the financing, the infrastructure, the teacher agency, the student agency. But we are not involved in it, so I don't know. We will see how it will go after they finalize it. But it's mostly greening schools. So they did a really good job on greening curriculum, and we had a recent report on that. We look to the instructory materials as well. There are many more things also should be done within the curriculum as well, but it's a good start, we believe. But we should pass beyond curriculum and discuss the climate justice issues in other aspects of the education system.
Thank you so much. I have a double question for Israël, and then I have one final sort of cross-cutting question that was just posted in the chat to sort of round off the Q&A as we are starting to approach the end of the event's time slot. So for you, the double question being, the policy model that you're presenting sounds very elegant, but at the same time, it might stumble when it runs into hidden issues. So how do you make sure that you implement changes successfully up and down the chain? And then secondarily, in your research, you have a perspective on how digital rights interplay with cultural rights in engaging and influencing children's engagement, both offline and online.
These are both really interesting questions. So starting with the second one, this is something that we still do not have many thoughts on it as the Latin American campaign for the right to education. But what we see, and it is very, very interesting, that we see a movement that we think is going in the right direction. For example, one of the experiences that we systematize in a report on open source free digital technologies implemented in public education was in Mexico, where indigenous community decided to store their own knowledge in a database owned by them. Because during the pandemic, they received the books by virtual media, and they saw that the books were only in Spanish. And this is a difficult thing in an indigenous community in Mexico, as you may believe, because they want their children to be taught in both languages. They do not just want the books in Spanish. They also want their books in their own native language. So a teacher decided to translate all the materials and generated a database for them, for the community, and he stored the books there. And by doing that, he generated a momentum in the community that the whole community decided to provide inputs for their database. So in education, they started to develop their own projects in their own language, discussing their own culture, and putting that in the database. So this is an interesting way of how they were demanding the guarantee of their cultural right, and also developing their own strategy to preserve their own culture. Now, on the other hand, something that we see happening that is not so interesting, a narrative that is not so interesting, that some owners of large language models, such as ChatGPT and many others, mention that they want their large language model to respond in every language, in all languages. At first, we think, oh, this is very interesting, because then we can use these tools in different communities and in different languages, and indigenous people can also benefit from the wonderful things a large language model is capable of doing, that I'm still very skeptical of them. But then we start to think, But where this data come from? They will come from the communities. The communities will provide the inputs for the large language model, so the large language model can respond in their own language. Where this will be stored? This will be stored in a data center owned by Amazon, Microsoft, Google, and all that. So what are the real benefits of it besides providing profit to Microsoft, OpenAI, and all these big techs? So the solution presented, it's not so interesting because it's a false ownership of the technology. You do not own anything. They now own your culture because you provide it to them, and now they will sell it to you. So this is not very interesting at all. The solution provided by the teacher in the Mexican community is so much more interesting because it is based on community knowledge and it's based on digital sovereignty. The solution developed and provided by OpenAI, Microsoft, and many others are not so interesting. But how do you scale the first solution? So this is the puzzling part, because Microsoft can scale their economies at full. The Mexican teacher cannot. So how do you scale the good solution and stop the bad solution? That's something that we're still trying to solve. And this is one of the issues to implement changes regarding the first question. Because when we talk about ethics by design and all that, they all sound very beautiful words, but when you come to the ground, things get really tough. Especially when we're talking about artificial intelligence. How do you develop a large language model that considers all languages, all things, and all aspects that we are considering and respect human rights and are developed without environmental impact? So this is all very tricky and it's all very difficult, but we know that technology evolve very quickly and the solution might appear out of nowhere. We all remember when DeepSeek exploded, and it was really an explosion that all of a sudden you can have a large language model stored in a microchip. And we thought that large language models needed gigantic data centers. And all of a sudden, some people start to develop in a microchip. However, it still have biases, it still has some problems, and it still have many, many issues. So we need to constantly critique, to constantly reflect upon the solutions that are presented so we can step by step enhance them and make them better. So we have the landscape painting, we have our horizon, and now we need to build the road. And to build the road, we go step by step.
I think that's a wonderful sentiment and a good perspective to round off on. Would love to input even more questions and get all of your insightful answers, but we are reaching the end of our allotted time. So Idem, I'd love to hand over to you for our closing remarks today.
Thank you very much, Bart. Thank you all for such rich contributions and what has been a truly engaging discussion. To all our presenters, Borju, Susan, and Israel, you have shared perspectives that span your regions, sectors, as well as your lived experiences. And yet we, at the end of this discussion, converge around still a shared commitment to strengthening the right to safe quality education. I think that what we've heard today reinforces a reality that many of us know all too well, which is that despite remarkable efforts across all these different contexts globally, we continue to confront deeply persistent challenges, whether they range from weak policy implementation and limited political commitment to realities of poverty, entrenched social norms, chronic underfunding of education. And added to these are even new pressures of, or not new, but growing pressures of conflict, climate, migration, and mobility, as well as the new paradigms that Israel so graciously shared in detail with us, new paradigms and threats ushered by digital technologies in education. All of which are increasingly shaping how our education systems are able to respond. And while each of the regional experiences offer their own unique insights, I think a common message surfaces very clearly in today's dialogue, and it's that even as global education, the community is grappling with so many complex structural challenges, many of which are now increasingly reflecting deeper ideological tensions in an increasingly polarized world. We also see powerful community-led approaches that are emerging at the local levels. Susan shared a couple of those. As an Echidna scholar, she has implemented one directly herself. The Echidna Scholars Program is housed at the Center for Universal Education at the Brookings Institution, and it even at the moment has an opening, a current call for new applications. So for those of you interested in pursuing gender-based education research, especially around girls and young women, I think this would be a great opportunity for you. Borju also shared about the specialized schools, which, even though are experiencing challenges, are providing a number of great benefits, especially in technical and vocational education in the Turkey context. So all of these, grounded, context-responsive strategies, I think they remind us that meaningful pathways towards more equitable education systems continue to be forged from the ground up. And on that note, I'd like to say once again a big thank you to everyone who has joined us from different parts of the world and time zones. Thank you for asking such thoughtful questions and bringing such energy into today's conversation. We're also excited that we were able to showcase and demonstrate to you the workings of the NORRAG social systems map. And as we continue to expand and deepen our collective work, I think that all of your insights today will only help to sharpen our understanding of the challenges that lie ahead. But for us, I think that today's conversation also reminds us very strongly of why tools like the map matter. When we bring all of these diverse regional experiences into one shared space, it's critical for us to have the tools to be able to forge real, meaningful professional connections and exchanges, to be able to continue the conversations and foster real collaborations. I imagine that a lot of people, after listening to all three speakers today, would want to continue the conversations, potentially, deepen their knowledge of their various areas of research, collaborate with you, invite you to their own context to see how your findings interplay with their own, challenges on the ground in their, the realities in their own local context. And so a tool of this nature is critical to deepen this collective work and our capacity to understand, to question, but most importantly, to act. On that note, I want to stress again how much we appreciate your time. If you had challenges registering your profile on the map, please reach out to Bart or myself via our emails, which have already been shared in the comment section, the chat box. So please feel free to reach out to us so that we can troubleshoot and help you to really set up those profiles. We look forward to connecting with you again in the future on our NORRAG events. Look forward to more of these kinds of cross-regional webinars. It's been exciting. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Enjoy the rest of your day.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thank you.